nice crowd for 9 o'clock on a Wednesday, on Mischief Day. Anyway, thanks very much for coming. I'm here with, my team over here, so I'll briefly introduce them and then we'll get going. But we're happy to be here to talk to you about our new program. So I have, you guys stand up for just a second. They're going to help me later, but I have Jess Kovacs, Quest teacher at Cedar Hill, Carrie Lindstra, the Quest teacher at Mount Prospect, Dave Pursley, Quest teacher at Oak Street, Debbie Blinsky, who is a Quest teacher at Liberty Corner. We also have Dr. Linda Cortina, who I'll introduce in a minute, and then a couple of the administrators who are here who work with us on the program and who may help us when we talk about some more specific questions later. We have Jen Rayfields, and I believe Grant Homer will be here at some point. So good morning, and I'm Kristen Fox. I'm the Assistant Superintendent of Curriculum and Instruction, and I oversee the Quest program. So I'm going to give you a lot of the background information and then ask my team to participate as well, where they're more the expert than I am. So this is what we're going to try to cover today, and then also have time for your questions at the end. You can't hear me? Is that better?
Yeah.
Thank you. So sorry. We're going to talk to you a little bit about the background and how we've got to this year implementation of a new but also revised program that the district used to run many years ago. So how did we get here? We're going to spend some time talking about sort of the philosophy of gifted education and enrichment for all. So what is gifted education? And what is our district philosophy on that in the way we're implementing this program? And then we're going to get into a little bit of the nuts and bolts, or a lot of the nuts and bolts of the Quest program. Specifically, how does it work? How are students identified? What about the non-identified students? So that's our goal for today. So our history. Kind of long, so this is here for you, and by the way, I will post this on the parent presentation screen tomorrow. There are some links you can explore and look at this in more detail. But I don't really want to go through 20 years of history with you. I do want to give you a sense of how we've gotten to the current program. So prior to 2009, with a few variations, we had as a district the school-wide enrichment model, which I will talk about because that is really what we're re-implementing. That was our model. The variations were that we had one gifted and talented teacher per building at some points in time. We reduced it down to 2 at other points in time. So one teacher traveled between 2 buildings and split their time due to budget constraints. And then linked here is an example of that curriculum at that time. But that was in place for at least 10 years in the district until 2009, when the program was eliminated entirely due to budget cuts. We had a series of budget cuts in the district, and so the school-wide enrichment model was eliminated entirely. From 2009 to 2014, our focus was differentiation in the classroom, meeting the needs of students at different levels within the classroom. Because for budget reasons, we eliminated staff. So in 2014, for a variety of reasons, one, we knew we wanted to provide enrichment opportunities for students, but we were also not in compliance with the law, which we are going to speak about further, with regard to our responsibility to provide education to gifted students. So there were some parents in the community working together with us, looking for specifically gifted programming in mathematics, and by 2009 we began to implement a new program that was focused on telescoping or accelerated mathematics initially. So at the beginning of 2014, we phased in a math enrichment program, followed by a phase-in of a telescope or accelerated math program over 3 years. So in 3rd grade, the first year, there was an accelerated math program that was then extended to 4th grade the next year, extended to 5th grade the 3rd year, and then 6th grade the 4th year. So we had an accelerated math program that was sort of what we were considering phase 1. The long-term goal was always to expand the programming to more than just mathematics and to more than just gifted students. So our goal was to provide enrichment for students who were also really motivated, really interested, very creative, bright, but maybe not gifted. But over that 5-year period, while that was our goal, we were phasing in accelerated mathematics and weren't able to really start realizing that second level goal until last year for a variety of reasons. One that's very important that I want to make really clear is we have one, as I pointed out and introduced my wonderful team, we have one gifted and talented teacher per building, which if you go back here, there were times when we didn't even have one per building. We had one going between two buildings. But even with one in one building, we have to think a lot about the resource we have and how we want to use that resource. So when they're providing accelerated mathematics to students in 3 grade levels, that's more than half of their time. So that what is remaining to provide all this other programming we want to provide is not much time. So our goal last year, 2018, district really wanted to move forward with the second goal of providing more than mathematics enrichment and providing it to more students than just gifted students. So we formed a committee. These people were on the committee, several administrators, several teachers from different grades. Dr. Cortina served on our committee as our consultant. What? And parents and board members. Thank you very much. We had parents and we had board members on the committee. Where we spent time thinking about what we wanted as a district, looking at the expertise that Dr. Cortina could bring us, the research, what our comparable districts were doing, and we came away with some recommendations. That is the program we're implementing this year. So the primary changes we recommended and are implementing this year was the elimination of grade 3 accelerated mathematics. We did that for a couple of reasons. First and foremost, we felt that the students in the curriculum was something we could accomplish in grades 4 and 5, accomplish the goals of the curriculum, which, by the way, I should explain. The goals of the accelerated mathematics curriculum is to really accelerate students through additional grade bands of mathematics standards. So by going through the accelerated math program, in grades 3, 4, 5, and 6, students would be covering the mathematics standards in grades 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and 8 by the time they enter 7th grade. So they're really skipping 2 years of mathematics. We're compacting, we're covering an additional 2 years of mathematics over that time period. So what we felt was we could accomplish that goal in 4th, 5th, and 6th grade successfully for those students. We also felt that the students in 3rd grade, holistically speaking, were not really ready to work at that pace, and that their needs would be better met in the regular mathematics program with some differentiation, some advanced learning opportunities. And then the side benefit is our Quest teachers in every building have more time for this other programming we're hoping to implement. So that was a recommendation we made last year and we implemented this year. Students at the end of this year in 3rd grade have the opportunity to qualify for accelerated math in 4th grade. We revised the identification process, and I'll talk about that a little bit later. We spent this summer developing programming for Quest that began this year. And like with all new programs, this programming will be developed, enhanced, expanded over time. We did a tremendous amount of work this year. We developed a significant amount of programming, especially in grades 3, 4, and 5. And we will continue to add to that and build upon that based upon our experience this year and just with time expanding what we're offering to students that they're interested in, engaged in, and connects to the curriculum. Finally, as a district, we decided to implement and add the Renzulli profiler. So you hopefully got an email from me a couple of weeks ago explaining how you can access this new district resource. In grades 3, 4, and 5, students are, or were, or did complete the Renzulli profiler in class. We asked parents to work with their students in grades K, 1, and 2 at home to complete the profiler. And then this is now a resource that's available to students, to teachers, to parents, to provide more enrichment opportunities for students than what the Quest program is even providing. It is an online platform, so you've got a login. There's a parent portal, and you can see the results of that learning profile that the students completed And the focus of the learning profile, we're going to show you a little bit of it towards the end of the presentation, is really what are students interested in, what are their learning styles. It's not an achievement, a measure of achievement or knowledge or anything like that, but it's a learning profile and an inventory that then matches them to activities, lessons, units, field trips, things that they might be interested in doing either on their own, in class, or part of the Quest program. So it's a resource that we're also learning, exploring, and beginning to use. And so you may see it used in the regular classroom, you may see students using it as part of Quest, but I think students are also using it, as I've heard, at home on their own, because they have a login and they can access some of these activities. So one of the biggest changes we made that I told you was sort of the elimination of grade 3 telescoping math or accelerated math. And I think one of the distinctions that I'm aiming to make here with you today, we're speaking about Quest, the new school-wide enrichment model, the enrichment program. I'm not here to speak as much about the accelerated math program, although certainly at the end we can answer some of your questions on that topic. But there really are two different programs that we offer. Students in the accelerated math program are part of the math department, part of the scope and sequence of mathematics. It is, like I explained to you, designed for students to accelerate in mathematics, to cover more math standards before potentially taking Algebra 1 in 7th grade and being on a track that is 2 years accelerated into high school. So a lot of those students qualify because they're really good at math. They do math on their own. They may or may not also be gifted. Some of the students are actually gifted and are now participating in both programs. Some of the students are just really good at math and they're not necessarily gifted, which we sort of hope to refine your understanding of that, as we go forward in this presentation. But I wanted to make the distinction for you that they are two separate programs. And as such, they have different sort of procedures for how students can qualify for either program. So that was sort of my lead-in, the history, kind of where we got to today. And at this point, I'm going to ask Dr. Cortina to come up and talk to you a little bit about the philosophy of gifted education that's led into our district program. She's going to spend some time with you on that and kind of what she brought to us as a committee. And then we'll get back and talk to you about the logistics of our program. So Dr. Cortina, came to us as a consultant who we hired to work with us. She was coordinator of the gifted education program at Rutgers University. And she had given some presentations that we were participated in, and we knew she could be a wealth of resources for us as we work to implement a new program, refine our identification profile, identification process, and so she has done that for us over time. So she's here to help us explain this to you as well. Thank you.
Thanks so much. I just have to start by saying it has been such a privilege to work with this committee. They are so hardworking, and the amount of time they put into and thought they put into developing this new programming was really, I really just have to compliment and just tell you what a privilege this has been. Wonderful, dedicated educators. So I'm going to start off by saying that there are no federal mandates at all for gifted education. So it does not fall under special education. There are a lot of federal mandates for special education. There are none for gifted education. So everything falls to the state to make their own requirements for what they require each district in gifted education. New Jersey falls someplace in the middle as far as what we mandate for gifted education. There are states across the country that don't mandate any services, any identification. In New Jersey mandates a board-approved gifted and talented program. This means there must be a policy that the board approves and a program that the board approves for gifted and talented students. The other thing that the state mandates is an identification process for students in kindergarten to grade 12. And this process must include multiple measures. That's a really important thing to understand. There are districts in New Jersey who have in the past, and perhaps still do, use one measure. They may give a cognitive ability test, an IQ test, and say, okay, anybody who scores in the top 3% is going to be identified as gifted in our district. But the thinking behind this is, okay, so what about those students who just don't score well in that test on that particular day? So the state requires that we use multiple measures. There are some districts that just said, okay, a teacher recommended that this student be in a gifted program. Well, we have no data to back that up. So the state requires multiple measures. They do not tell you what measures you must use. There are recommendations for best practice coming from the New Jersey the National Association for Gifted Children, but they don't say these are the measures you must use. They say you must use multiple measures. And beyond that, we're going to compare students to their local peers, their chronological peers in the local district. And this is really, really important because there may be many students in a district, some of these very high-performing districts, there may be many students where 50% of the students score in the top 5% in national norms, right? But in local norms, in some of these standardized tests, you're not going to have that many students scoring in the top 5%. So, and then we go to other districts that perhaps are students in poverty. They may have 1% of the students that score in the top 10% or 5% on the national norms. So the state's thinking behind this, and I think it's a very, I'm very, very glad they have these are the mandates. Every district is different. The students in your district have different abilities and needs than students in other districts in other states. So that's why they say this. We're going to use multiple measures, and instead of using national norms, we're going to compare students to their local peers. That is because your curriculum in this district may look different than the curriculum in Newark. The curriculum, a rich, demanding curriculum in this district is going to meet the needs of most of the students in your district. But it may be too high level or too low level for another district. So every district makes their own decisions about, these standards allow us to compare them to local peers because we all have different curriculum, we all have a different student population. And then the last thing is related to programs and services. So for example, if I have and I've seen this happen, believe it or not, but if I have a gifted program that is a language arts-based program, has no math involved in it at all, I'm not going to use math scores to identify students for a language arts program. If I have a performing arts program, I'm not going to use math or language arts scores to do that. I'm going to use an audition process. So the state also requires that any identification measures relate to the programs or services that you offer, and that just makes sense. The state not only requires us to identify gifted students, it requires us to serve those gifted students. So we must put in place programs and services for the students that we identify in our district. So they don't tell you what services you must. There are so many different ways to service gifted students. One is not better than the other overall. I work with a lot of districts, and I wish that I could go in and I could say, this is the program that you need, but every district is so different that you have to develop a program that works for your district and your students. So anyway, you must provide appropriate curricular and instructional modifications. So the typical curriculum in a district, right, is designed for the curriculum in a district is designed for the typical learner. So the third grade curriculum is designed for the typical students in this district. But there's going to be a small percentage of students for whom that curriculum is not appropriate. We're really looking to find the best educational opportunity for every student. If that curriculum is not appropriate, then we need to make modifications to that curriculum, correct? Just like the math that we were talking about. You want to compact so that kids can move at a faster pace. We're going to make modifications and instructional modifications as well. So we may allow students of the same ability to work together sometimes. We may allow students to work with their academic peers sometimes. We may allow them to work at a faster pace. So the state does require that we make both of these things. Just so that you understand, there is no dedicated state or federal funding for gifted education. So every local district in New Jersey funds gifted education on their own. And so they So this is why all gifted education is really local. The decisions are all local. What gifted education looks like at the top of the state and the bottom of the state is different. I've been to a lot of districts in New Jersey, and they all look different because they're not required to look the same, and we wouldn't want them to look the same because the needs of the students in one district are going to be very different than the needs of the students in another district. So what districts do, what this committee did, is they look at a lot of different factors when they're considering what kind of programming they want to offer their students. The first one is, how does the district define gifted students? I think the committee is going to talk about that later. But that's a really important thing. And we did a lot of thoughtful work on that. How do we define who are the gifted students in our district? And then what are our goals? What are our educational goals for those students? What do we want for them by providing services and programs? We would never identify a student for any educational program in our district if we didn't know why we were identifying them and what we're going to provide for them. So this committee did a lot of work, and it's extremely complex, identification and programming, and it takes a lot of real thoughtful conversation, and then coming to a consensus is very difficult. This committee did a great job doing that. Then you have to look at your district curriculum, and I talked about that before. Is the curriculum in your district is going to look different than the curriculum in another district because the student need is different. Now we're going to look at what available services and programs we have. Do we have a teacher at every building, or do we have to share a teacher between two buildings, or do we only have one gifted education specialist throughout the whole district? Districts have to decide what they're able to provide for their students. And then the student needs. What do our students need? What does the community, and I commend this committee too because they brought all stakeholders together to think about what do we want and what do our students need when it comes to advanced learning opportunities. And that's a very important thing. So there's a lot of options that this committee and that districts consider when they're putting together a program. So it does not have to be one of these, right? It can be a combination of these, which is what school-wide enrichment is. School-wide enrichment is a combination of many of these program options. So what this committee did is they looked at, okay, so what can we provide? What is best for our students? And how can we meet the educational needs of not only those high advanced learners for whom the curriculum, we need to extend the curriculum, but how can we best develop the gifts and talents of all the students in our district? So one of the things is pull-out classes where you're identifying the students and you're pulling them out and they're working in a room. Another thing is differentiation in the regular classroom, working to be sure that students' needs are being met in the regular classroom with the typical curriculum. Cluster grouping is where you're grouping students together purposefully, advanced students together purposefully in a classroom. Subject or grade acceleration is where either moving students forward by subject or moving them forward by grade level. Some districts chose to do magnet schools. There's very few districts in New Jersey that have done that. Patterson has done that extremely successfully. They have a school within a school, and we've seen their scores shoot up quite a bit. Consultation and collaboration is where you have a gifted ed specialist who works with teachers within the building to help them develop their skills to provide differentiation in the regular classroom. And then advanced honors classes where you're moving students through a curriculum more quickly at a quicker pace. So like I said, what we now have is a combination of these things. You can provide different services under the umbrella of school-wide enrichment and work towards a better option. So one of the things that we have to think about is, I talked a little bit about how we're looking to find the best educational opportunity for every student. We just want to provide the best education for every student. So Janet Sabo did some work several years ago that has held up quite well. But there is a difference between a student who's a good student and a gifted learner. And a bright child really does enjoy school. They're the good student that gets the A's. This is why we do multiple measures. Because there was a time when teachers just said, I think this student should be in the gifted ed program. And really what they were was just a very good student. So a bright child enjoys school. The gifted learner is really curious and enjoys self-directed learning, okay? And these are all generalizations, but this is a child who goes beyond what's in the classroom and will say, I really want to find out more about that, and go on and do that. A bright child knows the answer. The gifted learner asks the questions. This is a big thing. I was a general ed teacher, I was a gifted teacher, I was a school administrator, but as a general ed teacher, this is where the real difference arose. Because I would have children who would know the answers, and they would get A's on all the tests, but it was my gifted learner who just had me thinking beyond, would ask a question to have me thinking beyond what I was actually teaching the rest of the class. I tell this to teachers all the time, is very often I would have students, when I first started teaching, I would have students who would ask a question or make a comment that seemed so out of the blue, and I'd be like, oh, yeah, okay, and I would just kind of let it go. Then I learned to ask, why did you say that? Or why did you ask that question? And when that child explained, I realized that child was 3 steps ahead of me on a whole different level than I was in his understanding of the not his understanding of the concept, but where he was taking the concept. He was making a connection that I had never even made. So gifted students do this all the time. They're very complex and abstract thinkers. They do go really beyond your expectations for what students understand within the curriculum. A bright child works hard to achieve. A gifted learner knows without working hard. Many gifted learners, gifted readers especially, they'll teach themselves to read at 2 or 3 years old. All of a sudden they come up with these math concepts, and you're like, how did you know that? All of a sudden, they just know how to do multiplication because they figured it out in their head, and division. So we can teach students, we can sit down with them and we can teach them to read. A lot of these gifted children will teach themselves to read, they'll teach themselves math, they will go well beyond into science concepts and just be extremely curious, learn how to experiment on their own. It is different, they are a different child. A bright child has a really fine imagination. A gifted learner often uses that imagination to experiment with ideas and hunches. So they sometimes do come up with very outside of the box ideas that, again, we say, well, what are you thinking? And it looks a little strange. But then when we really look at what they're doing, they're so far beyond the actual, their age level in what their conceptual understanding of something is. So why is gifted education important? Why do we do this? Why do we develop programs for those students for whom the curriculum is not appropriate? We never want this to be a burden for students. And there are some potential pitfalls for students. Now, gifted students are not more prone to academic or social emotional problems than any other student at all. That is a myth that there's a borderline between genius and crazy. It's really, really a myth. But there are some potential pitfalls if we don't meet their needs. And some of you may look at your own children and say, huh, I kind of see that. The first one is perfectionism. Very often if we don't challenge students as young as kindergarten, first, second grade, third grade, if we don't challenge them, they get to 4th grade or 5th grade where things are more challenging, and they all of a sudden start to feel, oh no, this is a little hard for me. If I must do this perfectly. So perfectionism is oftentimes an outcropping of not having enough challenge and not having the experience of not doing something perfectly the first time, everybody praising me, and then I move on, right? And I do the next thing and it's easy, and I do it perfectly, and everybody praises me, and then when that doesn't happen, they start to question themselves, and then the perfectionism starts to rear its ugly head. The next thing is fear of failure. It goes right hand in hand with perfectionism. These kids are afraid to put themselves out there because they fear, I'm not smart anymore, things are a little bit harder for me. We haven't given them that resilience to fail because they've never really truly been challenged. This is why this is the most important thing you can do for our gifted children, is to make sure that we challenge them at an early age and all through school, so that they are able to build that resilience and that persistence when they are in the face of challenge. We don't want them ever to say, I'm not going to try that because I might fail. I might be embarrassed in front of my peers, or I might be embarrassed in front of my parents. We must challenge them so that they don't do that. The next one on the bottom there is loneliness. Now there is a difference between being alone and being lonely. And a lot of gifted kids, a lot of adults like myself, like to be alone. I like to be alone. There are people that are introverts that really enjoy spending time with themselves. And there's a difference between that. If we start to see children who feel so different, right? You have to think about this. Some of these gifted kids, if the curriculum is not appropriate for them, if it's not a good match, they're going to look different to their peers, and the children are going to feel different from their peers. Sometimes this leads to loneliness. And so we just have to be aware that we need to make sure that they're with their academic peers, which is a great, which is one of the great things about gifted education, is we allow them to be with their academic peers. When I had my own gifted program, I would survey the kids every single year, and I would say, what's the best thing about coming here? And they would say, because I can just be myself. Because they felt like they had found their group. It's a really important thing. Underachievement, the little girl with her tongue sticking out, underachievement. We do start to see underachievement when kids say, if you're not valuing me by giving me respectful tasks, I'm just not going to value school at all. That really does happen. So a gifted program, what gifted services and gifted programs can do is help kids understand that we value what they have to offer, that we want to give them respectful tasks. And the last thing is self-regulation and monitoring, and it goes right along with giving them challenging tasks. A lot of gifted kids have to learn when things get a little tougher in 4th, 5th, 6th grade, if we haven't challenged them at a young age, they have to learn how to study. They haven't learned really how to study because they just heard it the first time and they have it, and they get an A on the test. So my biggest complaint from parents when they got to 5th grade or 6th grade was, my child just, all of a sudden he's a mess and he's discombobulated and he doesn't know how to study. We need to teach them that. Okay, so what challenging curriculum from the time they're this big all the way through the time they leave our district does is it allows them to develop this. It allows them to develop those skills that they need to be good students. And I'm going to turn this back to the committee. And thank you so much. Any questions?
Thank you so much. So I'm going to spend a little bit of time talking about our philosophy, our mission, and how we got to the implementation of the Quest program. Just kind of going back to a lot of what Dr. Martina was saying, we are grounding our program in the law and what we're required to do, but trying to match that to our district needs and our philosophy and what we want to provide for all students. So in thinking about our definition of giftedness, it would be really great if somebody just said, this is what it is. Like she was talking about, if there was just one test we're supposed to give or 5 tests we're supposed to give. They don't do that. They don't give you the tests and they don't give you the definition. There's a lot of schools of thought around what giftedness is, what it looks like, how you define it, and how you provide services for it. But this is the definition that the New Jersey State Board of Education has adopted in their code, and it is the one that we also have adopted. So those students who possess or demonstrate high levels of ability in one or more content areas when compared to their chronological peers in the local district and who require modification in their educational program if they are to achieve in accordance with their capabilities. All very important points. That is our goal to capture in the program we created for gifted students, right? So these students require the programming. And one of the things Dr. Cortina said that I want to emphasize is that it's a small portion of the local school district of students who are defined as gifted. And if it's not small, then they're not with their academic peers, and their needs are not being met. So we sort of have a responsibility to find the right students. So we're providing those students with the right learning environment so they achieve in accordance with their capabilities. And conversely, students who are not gifted and in that sort of bucket, their needs are met in the regular classroom. That rich curriculum Dr. Cortina spoke about as well is meeting the needs of most students. And so they can stay in the regular classroom and reach their potential as well. So that's what we're working to do. So in our program evaluation, so all of this is published in our program evaluation, it's in this PowerPoint, but this is what we defined as our mission and what we're trying to provide students with. To challenge all children to pursue appropriate learning opportunities that promote gifted behavior. So all children. Gifted behaviors are evidenced when above average ability, task commitment, and creativity result in original materials, products, and or performances that reflect the highest standards of discipline. So this leads me into sort of the philosophy that we have adopted, which is that of, I'm not there yet, but Dr. Joseph Renzulli. Dr. Renzulli is out of the University of Connecticut, and he is one of the premier sort of thinkers and philosophers of gifted education that many, many, many districts have adopted. He's not the only philosophy of gifted education, but it is also the philosophy behind the school-wide enrichment model that I'll talk about, how that looks in this district. And it really is his definition that gifted behaviors are where these three things come together. We'll talk about that in a little bit, but above average ability with task commitment and creativity. All three of those coming together is where we see gifted behaviors and gifted learners. A couple of the questions on the survey, we are trying to address a lot of the survey questions in the presentation, and if we don't, we'll be able to answer some questions at the end. But some of the questions that came to us were, what are the goals of the program? What are you trying to accomplish with the QUEST program, with this school-wide enrichment model? And so we did develop sort of our program goals and what we're looking for gifted learners, but really for all learners by being able to provide enrichment opportunities for more than just gifted learners. So we want to develop the academic potential of the identified gifted learners for sure. We want to challenge them in their areas of their specific abilities and interest. A lot of gifted education is interest-based because you're tapping into that student's creativity and trying to engage them and let them reach their fullest potential in a way that's also connected to our learning goals for them. We're trying to develop their thinking dispositions and affective skills like risk-taking, curiosity, intrinsic motivation, which will allow them to become independent learners. So, by understanding these program goals, sort of helps explain when we describe the way our programming is set up and the opportunities we're trying to prepare or provide for students. To provide opportunities for students to interact with their academic peers. As we've said, that's very important for the gifted learner. To foster the development of social and leadership skills and a sense of societal responsibility. Encourage creative productivity through the development of higher order thinking skills like problem solving, decision making, and critical thinking. And finally, some professional development for all educators in the district so that this is, like a lot of these goals would be goals we have for all learners, right? Within our regular curriculum, within the regular classroom, these are the goals really for all learners. So it's part of our goals for our gifted and talented learners, for our QUEST program, and then providing them with an opportunity to do it with their academic peers allows them to reach their fullest potential in that different setting. So this is a little bit more on the definition of giftedness by Joseph Renzulli. He has a really great article, What Makes Giftedness? A Re-Examination of the Definition. And he sort of talks about how his definition wasn't always well received, right? But it has become universally accepted, not universally, but accepted by like a lot, the vast, I would say, right? Widely accepted is probably the right word. And so he's talking about the convergence of these three character traits. Above average ability, I'm sorry, I know you can't read it. Task commitment, right? They stick to it. They work on their own independently, even when they're not being told to. And creativity, right? Thinking outside of the box, thinking of questions we haven't asked them. It's not just one of them, and it's not just two of them. It's when all three of those character traits converge. And that's when we need to provide those students with sort of a different type of programming. Students who have one or maybe two of these are those bright learners. They're still very strong students. They're still going to be successful. They're still going to do well. They just might not need that alternate learning environment or to be separated with their own academic peers because they are able to do that within the classroom. So that's the background. What is Quest? Quest is the name we came up with when we formed our program to try to capture what we're hoping students do within the program over time. Question, understand, explore, seek, and think. This is our first year. One of our primary goals is to provide opportunity for more students, really for all students, but definitely for more students than we were providing when we were only providing accelerated mathematics. Last summer we started building the framework, and we're going to continue to do that. It will get better over time, and we'll be able to do more, and we'll build capacity. That's also within the context of, keep in mind, there's still one teacher in every building. I kind of made this really big. I wanted to encourage you to visit the website, which has all of this information in it, and it's where I will publish things like the criteria for next year when we develop it over the winter. So this website is a really good tool, and I encourage you to visit it. So Joseph Renzulli's model is kind of based on this idea of the enrichment triad model. It is broken into 3 types of learning opportunities. Type 3, we're calling like the identified students, the students who are identified for type 3 advanced learning opportunities. We are also saying that those opportunities are open to non-identified students who are really motivated. But these investigative activities at the type 3 level are designed with the gifted learner in mind and are provided to the gifted learner in a pull-out setting in grades 3, 4, and 5. But type 1 are learning opportunities provided really to all students. And so it could be an assembly, it could be a speaker, it could be a field trip, it could be the Quest teacher could go into just one classroom and provide something to a whole class. And it's designed to be interest building, something maybe a little bit outside of the curriculum that just piques students' interest or enriches their experience, but it's provided to all students. The type, for the programming we developed, the type 1 activities are tied to the type 3 activities projects that we'll go over in a minute. So they're going to expose them in the first trimester, for example, one of the type 1 activities was an assembly done on saving the bees, right, to all students. So the students learned about it. What? In third grade, not all students. All students in third grade. Each grade level had their own type 1 activity. So they got an idea of the topic, their interest was piqued, and then the type 3 project, the sort of long-term project, was shared with the students in Quest, but also made available to other students who are really motivated to participate in it. Type 2 activities are those activities like skill building. So in order to do this type 3 project, this enrichment long-term project, I need to develop these skills. They might be mathematics, they might be research-based, but they're specific skills designed to help the students achieve sort of those goals of the type 3 enrichment long-term project. So the identification process, this is also on the website. We developed it as part of the committee, and we worked on it even more in the summer, and it's something we'll continue to sort of refine as we go forward. What we're trying to achieve is really everything we've been talking about, identifying the students who need that gifted that advanced learning opportunity with their academic peers. So I just wanted to give you a little bit of the process. What we're doing is in the spring, so annually all students will be considered for gifted programming, for type 3 identification, all students annually. In the spring, we will look at students who are going into grades 3, 4, and 5. So in the spring, we'll look at students who are currently in grades 2, 3, and 4, right? And in the fall, we'll look at students in K1 and 2. So they're younger learners, and we want to give sort of their teachers some time to get to know them, some to develop some of their repertoire, their assessment profile, before we really start thinking about who's a gifted learner in those earlier grades. So K1 and 2 is in the late fall, early winter. Nominations can come really from 3 places, and the purpose of this is that we really don't want to miss any students because they were not nominated. So a parent can nominate a student for consideration, a teacher can nominate a student for consideration, and then we also look at the test scores of all of the students in the grade level. And for the students in sort of the top band of those scores, they would also be in that nominated pool. We'll answer questions at the end. By looking at those nominations of test scores, we were looking at a broader band, the top 10%, 10 to 15% of students on each individual assessment score that we were looking at, and we were looking at the assessment scores that the students already take in the district. And that was sort of published and sent home last year, but it included the COGATs that students take at the end of 2nd grade, the math test that students take at the end of 2nd, 3rd, 4th, and 5th grade, as well as our district writing sample. So tests that we're already giving. Then we created sort of an identification profile for all students where we compiled the assessment scores that we had for them. We looked at some qualitative data that we also collected based on parent profiles that were sent home for nominated students, teacher profiles that were completed for nominated students, and students' reflections were where they answered some questions about the type of learner they were. The qualitative data was not used as part of the identification, but going forward, as we develop and are able to more refine our process, it really should be part of the equation because it's how we get at the 2 components of giftedness, task commitment and creativity. Those aren't really measured by assessment scores as easily. They're certainly part of it. They're not as specifically tuned to that. So that qualitative data will become more part of the process as we move forward over time. Then a selection committee met and reviewed all of the data, and the goal was to figure out who the top 5% of the grade level were in each grade, looking at those scores. Like I said, this process, we're sort of reflecting on how it went, and we're looking at what are the right assessments to identify the right students for the right programs. And we will publish the identification process for spring, or next fall, in the winter, sometime in the winter. So kind of in summary, identified students will participate in Tier 1, 2, and 3 activities centered around a project-based curriculum. We've created them for the Type 3 students. If they don't want to participate in the project, they don't have to, right? If this is a project that doesn't interest them, we aren't going to require that they participate in it, but it is available for them. And they, in grades 3, 4, and 5, would be meeting with that Quest teacher weekly. In grades K1 and 2, once those students are identified, the Quest teacher will be visiting them in their classroom, pushing into their classroom, and providing those opportunities there. Created 1 project per semester, but part of this is also meeting the students' needs and meeting the students where they're at. And so as we kind of implement the project, we may find that it takes them longer than 1 trimester to complete the project, and we're going to allow them to develop it because it's really about meeting their needs. But we have created 1 project per trimester, and that's kind of our goal to meet over time with this program. And then again, all students have the opportunity to participate in Tier 1, which are designed to inspire interest in new topics. Tier 2 and 3 learning opportunities are motivated to all students if they're motivated and they want to participate in it as well, more independently and on their own. Now it's time for my team to join. So what we want to do now is give you some examples of the projects that were created and that the students are working on. Come on.
Hi, everybody. So over the summer, we strive to develop projects on the STEAM side and the humanities side for each of the grade levels. Our goal is 1 per trimester. In some instances, we try to link it to what they're learning in the general education curriculum. 4th graders spend a lot of time talking about national parks. So because that's such a big part in their language arts and their social studies study, we decided that we should make that part of what we do, getting in more into some of the mathematics behind it and some of the humanitarian issues that are going on with national parks. We also did that a little bit with 5th grade with the Civil War, because that is something that they studied. The literary magazines and the newspapers for 4th and 5th grade serve to kind of take our language arts curriculum a little bit further than it does in the general classroom, to give kids that opportunity to write pieces outside of the curriculum. But what we really tried to do was to make things that we thought they would be interested in, because we wanted them to be excited when they came to us. At the beginning of the process, a lot of it is capacity building. So right now we're working on them with their research skills so that they have the abilities to go forth and put together a project. With the 5th graders right now, you can see that both of them are working on stuff on Mars. The STEAM side of the group is thinking about what it would look like if we actually went to Mars and what that colony would be like, whereas the humanities side is kind of debating the efficacy of actually traveling to Mars and whether it's something that NASA, the United States, the world should be focusing on or not. It's really interesting to hear the kids debate it back and forth. They have a very different viewpoint than what we do. So what we tried to do was really just kind of spark some things that we've tried in previous years as our program was evolving, things that we've tried with different groups of kids that we've had, and things that we found that have been successful. We kind of scrapped some of the things that haven't been so successful over time because they just didn't work. And we're going to find this year that that may happen with what we tried to implement this year, and we might have to amend that as we go forward. But it was really our hope for when they came to us to just kind of make an activity that they like, that is exciting to them, and then guide them through that process where they learn different skills and different knowledges that they wouldn't necessarily learn in the general classroom. Like the roller coaster one, we're talking a lot about the physics of roller coasters and kinetic and potential energy, and then they're going to make roller coasters, which that's the fun part of it too. Because I don't know if yes.
So just so you have an idea of kind of like how this works and what it looks like, for example, with the roller coaster project, I had all 4th grade come and I did a presentation on roller coasters, and I showed them this video of this man that created a roller coaster in his backyard for his kids, and he showed them how he tested it and did all these different things. So that was something that was open to all 4th grade students. And after I explained the project to them and I gave them the option whether, if they were still interested, they had the opportunity to sign up to do the project. So my Type 3 students will be doing the project with me, but I also gave that opportunity to every student in 4th grade. And then I actually was able to get one of the 3rd grade parents is a Dr. Samanani actually came in and did a presentation for us on potential and kinetic energy. And so I invited all of those students who signed up for the project to come and join us. And yeah, so that would be the Type 2. And then after that I said, okay, if you're still interested, here is the information for the project. So then they can go off, and those students who are not identified can do the project, but then also those identified students I will see once a week doing it. So that's kind of just an idea of, for one of the projects, how it can go from Type 1, Type 2, Type 3.
One of the great things that doing these projects has built in our classrooms is the ability to work with peers and to brainstorm ideas, and the evolution in a short period of time of my students working together has really fostered an interest in doing more research on the topics that we chose for our projects.
And my biggest takeaway so far as the Quest teacher in trimester 1 is basically, I tell my kids that are identified, you're not my only Quest kids. Everyone in this building is my Quest student. And with these projects, these independent research projects that are presented to grades 3, 4, and 5, I ran assemblies for the grade levels as well. I have 150 students over those 3 grade levels that have sent back contracts and are working on these projects. So it's really a passion project that clearly the kids are excited about and participating in. If you haven't heard about them, please ask your children. We will have an assembly every trimester. But to see about 50 kids per grade level show interest in this is pretty exciting for us. So for every project, we created student task sheets so that it's uniform throughout all the elementary buildings. And we all have created our own Google Classrooms for the grade levels and for the Quest students to go on to. So So once you do commit to wanting to take on one of these trimester projects, your student can go onto the Google Classroom, because we will provide that Google Classroom code to your child, and it takes them through different links and activities and opportunities to build that background knowledge. It's all optional. I tell my kids, listen, you don't have to go through every little thing. You kind of pick and choose what works for you and that you're passionate about to meet that end task. And we have designed these for all of those projects for the upcoming year.
So I'm going to talk about a little bit about the Renzulli profiler. Over the summer, the district was kind enough to actually send me to UConn, where Joseph Renzulli and Sally Reese, who designed this program, are out of. And it was actually very interesting to sit down at a table with them and people that you've heard about for a really long time and read about them, and then you see that they're actual people. That was kind of cool. But one of the things that he really kind of drove home was the idea that schools should be talent development locations, and that we should develop talent in all of our students. So one of the things that we have invested in was something that he kind of put together, which with the students I've been kind of calling educational Google, just because it puts it down on a level for them. The profiler really just, it asks them what they're interested in. It asks them what kind of jobs they're interested in doing when they have to work on a group project. It asks them what kind of jobs they would like if they were working in the real world. It asks them what kind of things they're interested in, and they're allowed to say that they're not interested in things. I was working with some first graders yesterday, and one of the things was dance, and this boy goes, why would they ask me if I'm interested in dance? And I go, this is for everybody, and if you're interested in dance, that's okay. Like, you click what you're interested in. So it's very interesting watching the kids go. But after they complete their profiler, that's kind of when the magic happens. So it spits out this profile. So the profile is useful to all of you because it gives you a sense of what your child's interests are. It also gives you a sense of what their preferred learning preferences and styles are, how they would like to hear and gather information. Some people are more visual, some people are auditory, some people like to read. I know I need to watch it, I can't just read it for my own learning, so it kind of strives to figure those things out. So it gives you that information, but it also gives us all of that information too, which is really nice to put kids into groups with kids that like to work in similar ways, and to also put them in groups with kids that don't like to work in similar ways than them, because as we all know, when we get into the real world and we have coworkers, they don't always see things the same way that we do. So we need to start teaching our kids to work with kids of all different learning styles so that they can come to some sort of agreement and compromise. That's the cool part for us and the cool part for you. The cool part for them is the Google search, right? So if it comes up with a student that is really interested in volcanoes, his or her profile is going to have virtual field trips to go to volcanoes. It's going to have websites where they can learn about volcanoes. It's going to have so much information for them about volcanoes. It might turn them off of volcanoes because they get tired of reading about it. But if the profiler makes a mistake for somehow, or it didn't pick up on the fact that the student is interested in volcanoes, there's a search bar to it. So he can or she can go in and she can type volcanoes. So even if it didn't come up for them, they can still find all of it, which is like, it really gets to the heart of what we really strive to do with our program, is get kids interested in stuff and help them learn about it. That's really what we want to do, and it really seems like it will be a powerful tool to help us do that. And you can redo it. So as a child grows, their interests change. They just go back into the profiler, they can do it again, they can answer part of it again, they can answer all of it again, and it kind of regenerates what they're interested in. So if a student completes it in first grade, by the time they get to third or fourth grade, their interests may have changed. I know my first grader is really into unicorns right now. I don't believe that that will still be the fact when she is in fourth and fifth grade. So they can do it and they can change, which is another cool thing about this, is that we kind of adapt to their needs as they go forward.
Okay, so that is the end of our formal presentation, and we have a half an hour left, and so I want to see if there's any questions that any one of us can answer for you. I think you had a question before.
There's a top 5%.
Let me bring this to you.
Top 5% of each grade will be selected to this given talent program. 5%. So each grade is amount of all each school or amount of all the school districts?
So we looked at kids across the district to come up with what the minimum criteria were when we did that nomination process. And then when we did the selection committees, those were by building. Yeah. So we kind of tried to do both, but we made adjustments for the local level at an individual building. West is not in the middle school.
Take it out there in case we need to.
So if I understand correctly, are you saying that the accelerated math and the quest are two separate programs that could be continued to run, right? And after you identify students in second grade, how will the accelerated program run? So there is no accelerated math in third grade. I know you said you can answer to many of those math questions, but yes. Yeah, so I'm not clear. So after third grade, how will the accelerated math program run?
So at the end of third grade, we have a process in place that began at the end of second grade. It'll just begin at the end of third grade now. So students at the end of third grade who are interested in accelerated math program it's based on their, and we will obviously be looking at the criteria and publishing it in the winter. Sort of we revise that annually as well. But traditionally, it has been a combination of the MAP score, the COGAT score, and then there is there's no assessment in the first year. So it's a MAP score and the COGAT score. End of third grade. So there's no accelerated math for third grade that started this year, right? So there's no accelerated math in 1920, this current school year, for third grade. So those decisions haven't been made, how we're doing each of the assessments. That's kind of why I'm saying in the winter we will publicize what that is. Historically, we have given the COGAT score at the end of second grade. Right now, the team and I are trying to decide how to proceed. What is there are options that we have. Maybe it's a different assessment. Maybe it is that assessment every year. We're sort of trying to find the right solution at every grade level. Okay? So I don't mean to be vague, but we want to make the right decision. And so we will publicize it well in advance, usually around February. But we're evaluating sort of what we did last year, the needs now of a fourth grade student compared to a third grade student. So we're considering a lot of things and just going to develop the criteria. All right.
On the same topic, so if they didn't qualify in third grade for accelerated math, will they be in third grade? If they didn't, will they be reassessed a year later, or is it not done? Yeah.
So at the end of third grade, they can qualify to join the accelerated math program in fourth grade. And at the end of fourth grade, we have not traditionally had an on-ramping process for students going into fifth grade. So, but then going into sixth grade, there is an on-ramping process for the accelerated math sixth class at William N.
So one question is like for the K2 grade, second grade, so the assessment is in fall. So is there like opening the class like in the next semester, which is spring semester?
Yes.
Okay, so it's next semester, not necessarily next school year.
Correct.
Okay, the second question is how to differentiate the gift student and the high achiever, because like for all this, I still didn't get how to differentiate these two populations. I would say two different kind of type. And also whether like for the gift students, sometimes they have like imbalanced development in their different area. Will the different area impact being selected in the quest or gifted program?
So I'm not sure I understand your second question. You might need to give her the mic back, Michael. But the first question was, how do we differentiate between the bright advanced learner and the gifted learner? So I'm going to use Dr. Cortina's word where she said it's very complex and it's challenging. And there's not just one assessment, right? That's why the state asks us to use multiple measures. And that's why we're evaluating it all the time to try to determine that and use the measures that will help us identify students that have all three of those characteristics. And so what we've used is the COGATs, an intelligence, basically an intelligence test, the MAP test, which is more of a performance-based test, telling us sort of what the student's readiness for content is, as well as some of our local district assessments that we have, like the district writing sample.
I think the sort of
I'm not sure that I answered your
questions.
question,
Yeah.
but it's not easy to do, and so that's where the qualitative
That's right.
measures come in as well, right?
Yeah. So like for the highly motivated kind of thing, I think it's quite like a subjective assessment. Yeah, kind of try to understand how to select those students.
So I guess the idea that we've been working on with Dr. Cortina is looking at those kinds of measures, those qualitative indicators holistically to try to identify students who fit that criteria, but in a more holistic and not as much of a numeric way. You can't really quantify those things in the same way as what the student score on an assessment might be. So it's more of a holistic look at the feedback we get from parents, from students, and from parents, from teachers, and even from students themselves.
Okay.
Does that help?
Yes, that helps. Thank you.
Okay.
Question about the Quest itself. So if a child is already in Quest, do one of the Quest programs then, for example, will they need to be evaluated for the next year? And then the second part is if they got into one of the Quest program, can they be re-evaluated for the second part of this Quest?
Right, so really the simple answer is all students will be evaluated every year. So there is a difference now with accelerated math. When a student qualifies for the accelerated math program, as long as they continue to do well in that program, they will remain in that program. But in Quest, we're going to look at students annually, right? Because there is a growth and development occurring, and we do want to look at students sort of freshly every year. So for both programs. Hold on. It can, yes.
What is the difference in experience of now for those kids identified in just one part of Quest?
What is the experience?
Like how, say, for those who are Quest STEM versus Quest Humanities, how the experience of two groups differs? Is it like different pull-out groups? Is it?
Would you guys like to
You can talk to that, too. You can speak to that.
I believe in all four buildings, the Quest kids and the Humanities kids come at different times. In Oak Street in particular, I know the third grade is on the same day. At one period of the day, the STEM kids come. Another period of the day, the Humanities kids come. We try to pull the STEM kids out of their math and science class. We try to pull the Humanities kids out of their history and language arts classes. It doesn't always work due to scheduling, but it's a dedicated period for each.
So they are
different? They're separate.
Two separate programs, yes.
Is that the level one that you're talking about, or are you talking about level?
He's speaking about type 3. So the students who are pulled out, those are the type 3 identified.
So the
Wait, hold on.
level one, sorry.
It's okay. Just want everybody to hear.
The level one class or the level one projects, are they worked on, you said independently, is that in a classroom or is that at home? Like, are parents supposed to be like, are you working on a project?
So the level one experiences are just the pique your interest kind of activities. What I believe you're talking about is the non-identified students that choose to work on the Quest projects, which are the tier 3 projects that we've kind of opened up to everybody based on their interest. Depending on the building and our schedules, what we've done with the students that have not been identified is we've given them access to the Google Classroom. I know at Oak Street I had assemblies with all of the kids, then I had follow-up meetings with them to see if they were truly interested in the project. And they've been working independently, whether they do it with their friends in their classroom, whether they do it at home. And then there was going to be follow-up meetings when we can, and when their schedules kind of work with my schedule is kind of this check-in periods. I can only speak kind of at Oak Street, we're using that homeroom period for that as we get moving. Like, you know, if you're working on this project and you want to come check in with me, you know, this day is for all of the people working on the bees project, or this day is for everybody working on this particular project. That's how I'm doing it. It's slightly different just because we all have different schedules and demands put on us by the building administration, but it's kind of similar.
You guys want, does anybody else want to add anything different? Okay.
The only other clarification I'd like to make is, and I'm pretty sure this is happening in all buildings, is with these type 3 projects, the identified students are having more of their hands are held through that process. So they're coming to us once a week, we're teaching them the research skills, you know, the referencing, the paraphrasing, things like that that you need to know to research. Whereas if you are a non-identified Quest student that is opting to do one of these type 3 projects, you are doing independently on your own, at home, at school, whenever it works for you.
And certainly available to those students. So for example, if in the regular classroom, they end up with some extra time, it might work for a student to spend some time on it in school or to see one of the resources, perhaps it might, but it's not a scheduled block of time. And it is more on the student to seek those resources out on their own.
Hello? I would like to thank that the school district and Mrs. Fox, including all these teachers and committed whatever the time efforts they have put into this program. I think that the gifted program is really good towards our school district. I only have one small comment about accelerated math, because I did have my elder daughter she was at the first round of the accelerated math when she was at the 3rd grade. For their implementation, when my elder daughter when she was in 3rd grade, the selection of the accelerated math, the percentage was much smaller. But as of last year, I think maybe this year, the selection, the percentage of the students were put into accelerated math was at least doubled or tripled. And this created actually, I think, in my own opinion, it really created problem for the students in that group, because in that specific accelerated math group, the teachers can see the variety of their mathematical levels. Based on my younger daughter, my daughter is currently in the 4th grade. She is in the accelerated math. And she came home to tell me that some students in the same accelerated math, for the quiz or test, some students can reach up to 90 or 100. Some students can only achieve 50 in that quiz. So I think that this type of implementation create difficulties for the teachers, for their teaching, and it's not good for real, truly accelerated math students and for those students who were put into that program. Because the students who were not really get that truly mathematic training, when they go to the higher level, no matter what, you will see that their math skills is not going to support them to go to faster or higher level. That's my comments.
You guys can feel free to jump in if you want to, but I think what I would say to that is that sort of speaks to the fact that we do reevaluate our criteria every year. We reflect on those exact types of things. Your observations are probably often some of our own observations, and our goal, kind of going back to what we were talking about with philosophy of gifted education and meeting the needs of students, what we're trying to do is create an identification profile that will identify the right students for the right program. It's not an easy task, and we're working on that. And so that's sort of a fair observation, and it's part of what is certainly behind some of the changes we've implemented this year.
And
David?
It kind of goes hand in hand with, like, as Mrs. Fox said about why we kind of eliminated the 3rd grade program of the telescope. It created undue stress in some of these kids as they were coming up to us and say, what math score do I need to get into the math program? And that's not the point of school. That's not the part of our program. And it is our district goal to look at the social emotional health of our students. And if our program was creating that kind of angst and anxiety in 8-year-olds, that's why we re-examined it. It's to help these kids stay calm. They're 8. They don't need that pressure put upon them. They have plenty of time for that.
And certainly our goal is for the students who really are ready for that type of mathematics to find them and to provide that programming. But along the lines of what Mr. Persley was saying, not putting undue pressure on students who really aren't ready to work at that level.
And that group, you're absolutely right. I can appreciate what you're saying. I teach that large group of students. But they were identified with the older identification process, and we grandfathered them into the program. So hopefully moving forward with the multiple measures that we're using, we won't have that issue again.
Hi, I did understand from a previous question and answer that this program is not in middle school.
No.
So what happens to these students who are kind of getting geared into the, say, the 5th graders who really like the best program? Is there anything similar in the middle school is what I'm asking?
What we have in the middle school is different. There's not this pull-out quest enrichment program for gifted students, but there is the accelerated math program, which leads into the Algebra 1 course and then the geometry course for those students who are twice accelerated or even once accelerated. And then the students at the middle school, it's sort of the philosophy is there's a variety of electives and opportunities for them to participate and expand their, their learning opportunities in electives that they're interested in, right? But not in that sort of gifted pull-out way.
Mrs. Fox?
Who's that? Okay.
Hi, I have a question about the QUEST program and then another question about accelerated math. I don't know if I can ask 2 questions. So for accelerated math, so you said they're 2 years ahead, essentially, of the traditional student. So my question just is, at the end of their high school career, what have they taken that the traditional student hasn't been able to?
That's a really great question. I think Mr. Palmer might like to speak to that.
Oh, sure. Oh, so the other question is, so for 3rd to 5, they're pulled out. For K to 2, the QUEST teacher comes in. So for K to 2, does everybody benefit from the QUEST teacher coming in?
Yeah.
So the accelerated math program starts 4th grade, and then all the way up until it's a great perspective to have a high school. Where do they end up? Okay? In accelerated math 6, going back to accelerated math 5, going back to accelerated math 4, they're on a trajectory that we call 2 years ahead accelerated. So they're taking Algebra 1 in 7th grade, where a normal student or a year ahead student would take Algebra 1 in 8th grade, and a traditional academic student would take Algebra 1 in 9th grade. 2 year ahead accelerated. Where this ultimately ends up is a student being able to afford to take calculus by their 11th grade year. That's it.
Being in 7th grade algebra.
In 7th grade Algebra 1, they'll go on to take geometry, Algebra 2, pre-calculus, and then finally calculus at the 11th grade year. The student who is a year ahead accelerated, they get to take AP calculus their senior year. And we're trying to find those students who are accelerated, who are trying to do, or just criteria enough for students who are truly ready for that rigorous learning academic curriculum,
Now,
right?
a student who takes that calculus course in 11th grade has a second calculus course available to them in 12th grade.
A follow-up to this, actually. So if a student is not in accelerated math and not in QUEST, can they ever take algebra in grade 7, algebra 1?
Yeah, they can. Students who are not in the accelerated math class can, before we had accelerated math, there was a process for qualifying to take algebra in 7th grade. That was rubric based. It was based on test scores. In the classroom in 6th grade, it's based on the MAP scores. And they can qualify to take algebra 1 in 7th grade, having not been in accelerated math, that way. In the winter. So the criteria for algebra 1 in 7th grade would be posted as well, in the winter.
Hi.
Hi.
Thanks for putting this together. I have a 2nd grader at LCS. I'm new to the district, so if I could just take a step back. Is the identification process over for school year 19-20? And when does the identification process begin for 2021? And what assessments are going to be used for a 3rd grader in 2021?
Rising 3rd grade. So for
Yeah.
your child
Someone
is in
entering
2nd grade?
someone entering 3rd grade in
2nd
20.
grade right now?
Yes.
So for K1 and 2, we're beginning the process of identification for them now. And that programming would be available around in January. So that is for this school year, for current 2nd graders, 1st graders, and kindergartners. Now in the spring, we will begin the identification process for 3rd, 4th, and 5th grade. So for current 2nd grader, again, will be the identification process for next year in the spring. So what the criteria are, like I said, will be published in February, in the winter, prior to when we launch. Oh, the criteria for the spring is, it is posted on that website. We are looking at a teacher profile. There will be a parent profile again for nominated students. And then we have some local district assessments. These students take a district writing sample. There are classroom assessments that we will use for them. But really with kindergarten, 1st and 2nd grade, we are trying to take a more holistic approach. Like we're kind of looking at it like in kindergarten especially, but also first and second grade, they're very young, right? And they are growing at a rapid rate. And we are looking for students who meet that criteria. It's more difficult because there aren't a lot of high-stakes assessments that we're giving them. And so it is a little bit more holistic in what the teachers are seeing, parents are seeing, and what the Quest teachers might see by being around those students. Do you guys want to add to that? Did I cover how we're going to approach that holistically? And then, so that's part of why we're going to push into the classroom, right? So they will be able to work with students who have emerged as identified students, but they'll also be in the classroom where other students can benefit from those activities as they unfold.
Hi, I just want to thank all of you. I've been to 3 different school districts in 3 different states, and this is by far the most complete GT program that I've seen, so thank you so much. I know you've been putting a lot of time into it. I feel very lucky that we're going to speak with David personally because one of my questions was how, like one of the other parents, how do the non-identified people, do they get the kind of guidance and support that the identified Quest students do? So I think that's great that you made time for them. And I kind of think that they're shafted. The kids who really, like want to do these extra projects, if they don't get the kind of support that the Quest students do, that kind of just defeats the purpose, I think. But you've also already answered that. One big question is, can every Vernon Township student get access to the Renzulli program?
All K-5.
But what about throughout the,
I know we bought it this year, we purchased it and implemented it in K-5.
do you plan on expanding it? I know there are different, tests or, assessments that they do.
She's our first year, so certainly consider that.
This is fantastic, thank you so much. Oh, and also to speak to how your daughter's senior, the math classes are much bigger. I completely agree. So you always have to basically teach the lowest common denominator, so she's probably kind of missing out.
And to your point about the type 2 and the students who are not identified, that is certainly something that we're thinking about as well. And so I think we tried to say this is definitely an evolution and a work in progress. So we're always going to try to make that a little bit better if we can. That's sort of the nature of the beast, right? We're trying to provide that, remember that advanced learning opportunity with their academic peers, and that needs to be a smaller group if they're going to reach their potential. So to meet their needs, it has to look like that. But we don't want to exclude non-identified students either. We want to give them the opportunity so when they're really motivated, they do have the ability to do it. And there are school resources available when it works, right? We have a lot of professionals who are interested in the kids meeting their potential. So if a student's researching something, we have a media specialist, right? There are other resources, but it is more dependent upon the student's motivation.
Just a question about the Renzulli test. I think that's fantastic. We do that in work all the time as adults, so I think for children, it's fantastic to do that. Just a question for the K through 2 grades. As I understand, we are supposed to be doing that at home. It is not going to be done in the classroom or at the school level?
So for this year, we made the decision to ask the parents to do it with the K1 and 2 students for a couple of reasons. One, we don't have access to as much technology for K1 and 2. We aren't one-to-one in K1 and 2. So we don't have as easy of an ability to put those students at a computer. We're not even sure we want to, right, in K1 and 2, put them at a computer. So where we thought it might be more appropriate for the parents to walk those students through it this year, we wanted to evaluate how that goes. If there's another way to do it next year, one idea we've explored is having an older student in the building, partner up with the younger students and help walk them through the profiler. But I will tell you that the University of Connecticut gave us some advice on that, and they said you're not necessarily going to get, in either scenario I've described, right, where the student is working with their parent or when they're working with an older student, where are we going to get the most accurate sort of reflection of that student's interest? And that's what we're kind of looking to do. We sort of decided that the parents might be the best place to start for this year. So I hope that answered your question.
And we actually turned it back on. Renzulli advertises or suggests that we turn it off for K2, but we thought it would be valuable just for you and us to get that information. But if you don't want to do it, you can bypass it, and then you still have the access to the Google portion of it.
But that's a good point. You don't have to do the profiler to access the materials and the activities. You can bypass it.
profile will just let you, you and your child think about what they like and what learning styles, the way they like to learn. But you can bypass it. You have about 5 more minutes.
Hi. I want to speak about the Quest program. I have a 3rd grader. He's 8 years old, and I'm very uncomfortable with the way the program is implemented right now. I will be pulling him out. I heard a lot about how kids are identified to be in the program, not to be in the program, but frankly, we know that there are kids. I didn't hear enough about what the school will give them, how they will be taught. I heard that school is aware of the fact that they have some obligation, but I hear that they have interpreted as we will provide them something with something so they're not bored. And the independent projects that presented right now to them are too vague. My child, can everyone hear me? My child is 8 years old, so of course he chooses to plant a garden in fall. And I don't think this is time worth spent. This is not where academic development should be. I would rather he at least read a book the same time that he would spend digging, planting bulbs. I don't see how teachers are guiding enough to prevent a kid who is interested, and they're interested in lots of things. How will this be academic growth? So it's, of course, all these goals, the buzzwords, they sound great, but I didn't hear how they will be taught. So of course it's fun for them to build a roller coaster. There are lots of things they can do that are fun, and just because they're gifted and they absorb things faster doesn't mean we should let them play on their own. So he's in humanities. Humanities is the study of languages, history, art history, literature. Just how is it possible for the first project to be community service? I'm very uncomfortable with community service being part of required curriculum. I feel this is, of course, an admirable character trait, values that parents should share with their kids. This should be parent-guided, but to have community service as a project in humanities, I expected him to learn. I listed. And the next one is endangered species. How is that humanities? So I know it's a new project, but first of all, there should have been some consultation with the parents. I've been to other districts, and my kids were, one kid at the time, the district met with me, and they had a plan how to meet my kids' needs, how they're planning to take her through the year. All I see right now, my kid coming to me and saying, let's go figure out what we can plant right now. And I have emailed the teacher, and she feels that this is appropriate, this is his interest.
I don't know if I heard a question, but I know you sent me an email, and I'd be happy to, sit and continue to talk about your specific concerns. Is there a question?
The question is, how would school guide this not to become playtime? Okay, how would we taught?
Well, we did not go through the lessons with you, but that was the sort of overview of a type 1, a type 2, and a type 3 activity, right? So it showed you the task sheet for a type 3 project, right? That is the project the students are working on. And the type 3 lessons are where those skills are taught to the students in the time that they're with the Quest teacher. So that's where that is happening. The how is kind of described briefly when we shared how the roller coaster project was unfolding. So we brought in an expert, and they talked to them about kinetic energy, potential energy, and developing their skills in that project. So, and the other thing I guess I was going to say to you was, we said it's optional, right? So the students do not have to participate in it if they don't want to. And so I guess beyond that, like I told you, I'm happy to talk to you individually about your concerns.
So I just want to, because my child is in STEM right now, he's having a blast making the roller coaster project. I do want to say every student learns differently. My son loves exploring it. He is like, okay, if we make it too, we got to put the loop at the end or in the front, things like that. So I think it's more of a exploratory type of program. I think the instructors are trying to provide not too much guidance purposefully, right, and let him experience and have failures, which I think my son needs, I think. So I actually brought him to a cross-county math competition a few weeks ago, and they post those math competition examination online from previous years. And I looked at them, and then I know he would fail. And I purposely brought him both of them. I woke them up at 7 to bring him over there, just to let him know that he could fail. But I was just proud that they woke up to go with me on a Sunday morning. All right? So I think everyone learns differently. I understand your frustration too, just like some of her frustration too. So we all have frustration, but I don't see there is always one program that will fit everyone, right? So it depends on the child's learning. If they don't like it, make it optional. You know, selectively pick a project. Maybe it's easier or simpler. Maybe we could change the program to have, instead of a 15-second kind of thing, maybe 5 seconds. You know, I don't know.
Yes, and we will work on it. Go ahead.
We would.
This is really going to need to be the last question. It's 10:30 and we have lunch coming in here and some teachers who need to get back to teaching.
Last year we moved here and my daughter, she was in 3rd grade and she gave COGAT math and on-ramp testing, and she did well in COGAT math. She got good scores, and in the on-ramp she got a little bit less percentage. Because of on-ramp percentage, she did not get into accelerated and Quest, or how you identify the kids?
For Quest?
And GNT.
Quest, Gifted and Talented,
Yeah.
Quest, the enrichment program?
Yes.
Compared to the accelerated math program?
Yes.
I mean, listen, I can talk to you, I'll be happy to talk to you about your own daughter. Are you just asking generally about what the criteria were?
No. She gave the test already. She got a good math score.
Oh, for this fall?
Last spring. 3rd.
Well, I can talk to you about those exact results if you haven't already gotten them. You
Yes.
should have gotten them. So I'd be happy to do that. If you can send, you can give me your name afterwards and I can give you a call, okay? Thank you, everybody. I really appreciate you coming. We'll be doing this again tonight.